I've been interested in different aspects of graffiti for a while now. It's something that I see every day, we see every day, you know. But aside from the off-the-cuff remark na parang ang pangit naman yan, ang dumi, di ba, ang dungis. It's not really something that we try to understand. So it seemed worth exploring to me as it's something that I see daily, but again, we don't understand. So today I want to focus on graffiti and its dynamics with buffing in particular in Marikina City. While there is yet to be a national law against vandalism, the existence of ordinances such as Marikina City's Ordinance Number 17 prohibiting graffiti as a type of defacement of property signifies its status as an act of deviance now from social order. So as such, graffiti is also considered as a public issue, one that requires corrective action. So one form of corrective action is Marikina's consistent effort in buffing. And buffing is really the erasure of graffiti, no? So yun yung tawag sa kanya. The existence of such efforts to erase graffiti gives us an idea that graffiti is perceived to not only be ugly and undesirable, but even disruptive. So, ano nga ba talaga yung dinidisrupt niya in the first place, di ba? Bakit siya offensive? Bakit parang di siya kaaya-aya sa maraming tao? What social order exists such that the presence of markings on walls is threatening, no, and their erasure might address this disruption. This project, therefore, is an ongoing study that really aims to understand the extent, no, of this kind of perception, no, or the influence of formal institutional definitions and perceptions on public attitudes on urban art. So specifically, the study builds on the question of how are formal institutional definitions of and perceptions on graffiti deployed. So dyan papasok yung gobyerno, yung elite spaces, etc. So focusing on buffing as one form of the deployment of definitions of and perceptions on graffiti, I ask these questions that are on screen, particularly focusing on ano ba yung kino-communicate ng buffing? Paano ba siya dine-deploy? Ano ba yung intended and unintended effects and impacts niya sa mga tao, sa community, etc. So, in studying this, I hope to understand the kind of order held or aspired to by formal actors and institutions. So, how is this order maintained and administered, whether in appearance or in actual, and how not only graffiti artists, but also the greater public are impacted, no, by this kind of order, and the strategies that we use to maintain or enforce this specific kind of order. So in studying this, I hope to highlight the tensions that exist, no, or encapsulated in urban objects and spaces, no. Tensions that about what is acceptable, what isn't. Nasa tingin ko, no, related naman sa questions of crime and authority. So focusing on aesthetics also opens up a conversation on how everyday objects come to be arenas and objects of power, control, struggle, but also resistance. So this can help render visible the narratives, the realities, the experiences in urban spaces which have been marginalized, no, invisibilized or suppressed. But in other ways, no, they still continue to fight back. So, ang ginamit kong methodology, no, para sa study na to is, well, I used researcher-generated data as well as existing data from online, and this data I discursively analyzed, no. So, the researcher-generated data came from my walking ethnography, where I scoured the streets of Bayan Marikina to look for a single case of buffing that I could hold up as a model, no, to analyze. I took close-up photographs of the buff, and I also wrote thick descriptions to ensure that I'll be able to capture the spatial and visual context of the buff as best as I can. I also use supplementary data from online. I used particular posts from a Marikina City WordPress blog. This blog ran from 2008 to 2017, no? And also Google Maps historical street view function. So this was very helpful in giving me a better historical context of the space, of the graffiti and the buff that I was able to see in the streets that I walked. In analyzing this data, I was guided by two primary concepts. First of all is yung neoliberal aesthetics ni Emma Arnold, and secondly, yung symbolic violence ni Pierre Bourdieu. So yung neoliberal aesthetics, these are aesthetics that center the values of profit, economic growth, private interests, and the logics of elite spaces such as the art world. From this perspective, graffiti is seen as a threat to hegemonic ideologies, which really enshrine private property and law, no, as the most important, according to Young. Related dito sa concept ng neoliberal aesthetics, I would say, is Deborah Landry's aesthetics of security, which is a component of order that is pursued and maintained by governments. No? In this perspective, in aesthetics of security, graffiti is seen as a symptom of disorder and contamination. Para siyang sakit na dapat nilulunasan, dapat nililinis at pinapagaling. Makakatulong din sa atin na i-orient or mas maintindihan yung neoliberal aesthetics by looking at word use symbolic violence. Kasi it imposes certain definitions and experiences of reality such that others are rendered illegitimate, invisible, or erased altogether. So through symbolic violence, buffing can be framed as for the protection of order, private interest, and capital. So, buffing can thus be seen as an assertion of state and capital's total control of urban spaces and realities, according to Stewart and Courtwright, no? And buffing therefore also silences alternative voices, alternative experiences, and narratives which are symbolized in markings such as graffiti. First of all, no, before I start on my discussion on Marikina, there are three kinds of buffing according to my literature review, no. Interestingly, kung titingnan natin or ituturing natin yung buffing bilang erasure ng graffiti, may tatlong iba't ibang kinds ng buffing according to the literature. So first, buffing itself, no, refers to the use of chemicals such as solvents to erase paint from surfaces. Ito yung makita natin sa first picture kung saan parang pinupunasan lang para ma-erase yung pintura. Another form of buffing though is abatement, no? Ito yung tawag ni Stewart and Courtwright sa buffing na pinipinturahan, no? Painting over and covering up graffiti. So in this photo, you will see that abatement is being done with care to match the paint to the surface being buffed, no? So talagang parang kine-camouflage niya talaga yung marking na gusto niyang takpan. But we will see later, no, that not all abatement really tries to do this. And then there's another type, which is muralization, according to Halsey and Pedrick, no? Where property owners or local governments commission murals to cover or fill spaces that are usually riddled with graffiti. So, in general, parang makita natin na may dalawang major kinds, no, or forms of erasure. One is rendering a surface blank by erasing it through, ayun nga, yung paggamit ng chemical, solvent, or paint. And another is by saturating a surface that is covered by graffiti, no? So, tinatapalan mo siya ng iba't ibang images such that graffiti might be discouraged, no? Kasi pag puno na yung space, baka hindi na nila susulatan. Ganun at least yung idea and assumption sa paggamit ng ganitong klase ng erasure. So ito, no, ano bang klase talagang buffing ang ginagawa sa Marikina City? So, as we paint over graffiti, ito yung ginagawa niya, no? Pinipinturahan niya. It paints over graffiti. So, pwede natin siyang i-consider, no, na simpleng form lang ng abatement. However, interesting dito yung paggamit ng label na Marikina art, as well as the use of bright colors and overlapping shapes, no? Which might give us the sense that the city government is trying something here. What it might be trying for, I'm not really sure, no? And that's something I hope to explore further. Pero parang may something siyang ina-attempt na gawin sa pagtakip niya ng graffiti gamit itong bold letters, colors, and shapes. It's not insignificant to look closely at the buffing either. Kasi yung bright and various colors, nakita natin na hindi siya nagmamatch dun sa original appearance ng surface na it hopes to clean, di ba? Nor does it match the already existing layer of buffing that existed on the surface before it. So makita natin dito sa picture, hindi lang yung mga bilog-bilog yung nag-e-exist. Meron din siya nung pink sa ilalim na hindi din nagmamatch exactly doon sa surface na pinaka-original, di ba, na gusto niyang linisin. So ito yung original na itsura nung wall or at least yung naunang layer ng buffing na nag-e-exist before natin makita yung mga bilog-bilog na may Marikina art, 'di ba? So kita natin it's just pink, no? It's just a swatch of asymmetrical pink. I can't zoom in closer on Google Maps, pero itong older layer of buffing nga na makita natin sa ilalim ng bilog-bilog kanina, it's pink, it's asymmetrical, and it's already been re-graffitied. So parang may tinatakpan na siyang graffiti before, kaya nagkaroon ng pink na layer ng buffing, pero sinulatan pa siya ulit. So, this explains why there's a new layer of buffing, di ba? Yung bilog-bilog nga. Kasi tinatakpan niya yung tags na nilagay doon sa nauna ng layer ng buff. Which gives us an idea na pwede rin palang i-retag pa, no, ang buffing. Buffing doesn't really drive away or cover up graffiti forever. So, ano nga bang meron sa Marikina buffing? As I've mentioned, neoliberal aesthetics refers to how urban aesthetics are informed by the valorization of property due to values of profit, private interest, and the logics of elite spaces. Ang assumption dito is that buffing in the pursuit of neoliberal aesthetics will lead to visuals that promote the respect of an increase of value of property. So kunwari, medyo in vogue ngayon either yung mga minimalist na talagang parang earth tones lang, ganyan, o kaya graphic design, no? Na nakita natin sa mga murals, parang yung nakita natin sa BGC, 'di ba? Itong mga graphic design na to, typically they appeal to the general taste of people. So, magandang example talaga yung BGC kasi doon natin makikita pareho 'di ba? Na parang mga solid minimalist colors lang siya, pero meron ka rin ng mga panaka-naka na murals do'n, 'di ba, yung parang malaking mukha ni Andres Bonifacio, ganyan. So given this, I would say that the way Marikina buffs seems to be a crude attempt to enforce new liberal aesthetics. Crude kasi it doesn't really even try to match the surfaces it's supposed to be cleaning up. Nabanggit ni Young na ginagawa itong pag-buff without even really considering anong aesthetics or visuals ang preference ng mga tao na nag exist sa community na yon. So in that way, I see two levels of violence eh. One against the graffiti artists whose works encapsulating their aesthetic preferences, their alternative senses of order and meaning were being erased by the government. So yung unang layer sa artist mismo. Pangalawa, layer ng violence against property owners and residents whose property does not revert to their pristine state, no? Hindi siya bumabalik sa malinis at original niyang itsura after siyang i-buff. So, pwede ngang tingnan na napapalala pa ng buffing actually yung property. Kasi minsan mas matingkad pa yung mismong buff kaysa sa mga tag at graffiti na tinatakpan nito as we were able to see doon sa bilog-bilog na nasa Santo Niño Chinese Temple. So, itatanong din natin, no, does buffing even count as an enforcement of aesthetics of security when it doesn't really leave surfaces clean? Parang imbes na lunasan yung disorder at contamination ng graffiti, nagiging band-aid solution lang yung buffing doon sa problemang nag-e-exist, 'di ba? Another is that, as mentioned earlier, no, mayroong paggamit ng bright colors, clustered shapes, which might give the sense that the city government is trying for something visually with the buffing. Labeling the buff Marikina art as the highlight here, seems to also convey that the colorful buffing is an aesthetic decision. Deliberate siya, di ba? Na parang, pag tinawag mo siyang art, matatransfer yung principles ng art dun sa gawa at magiging art na yung gawa in itself. Regardless of kung parang mapaperceive ba talaga as art o hindi yung buff. So I interpreted this as the city's attempt at buffing bilang muralization, hindi lang simpleng pagpintura or abatement, 'di ba? Where they try to fill space with artwork to both cover up and discourage graffiti. However, it does lack those certain traits that parang that might convey a more artistic sense to it. So it lacks the appeal to broader visual sensibilities, yung parang more appealing or intelligible yung visual elements niya, mas nagigets at mas palatable sa mga tao. And the more technical aspect no, or execution of it. So, hindi lang yung artistic skills kasi yung involved sa muralization. May organizing skills din na involved kasi syempre public space yung gagamitin mo, kailangan mo ng permiso at pag-cooperate ng iba't ibang klase ng tao, etc. And that's necessary in muralization, no? So I'm not sure if that really exists here. It's still something to be explored, of course. Pero kung gaano ka-glaring, di ba, yung pagka-bold ng colors, ng buffing, can really lead us to question, no, kung may presence ba ng mas technical na skills sa pag-implement ng Marikina buffing. And kung questionin natin tong existence ng technical skills na to, pwede rin natin questionin kung mural ba talaga ang Marikina art, di ba? Or baka simple at baka inconsiderate pa nga siya na form of abatement. Kasi parang hindi niya minamatch yung original na itsura ng surfaces na pwede nating i-assume may mas preferred, di ba, ng mga property owners na nag-graffiti yung kanilang surface. Interesting tong picture na to. This is just a few blocks from the temple no, na ginamit kong case para sa project na to. Kasi makita rin natin yung ibang attempts at muralization ng local government. So I did my fieldwork on May 26 after the elections and I would have been able to see this wall if I went before elections. Kasi itong pader na to, it was plastered with so much election paraphernalia. So the first time I came back to this place was really after elections nung May 26 na nga. So it was really only possible to see this wall after I started my project. Nagulat ako eh. Kasi nga dati puro poster to. Tapos nung dumaan ako ulit after elections, parang "Uy, hindi ko 'to nakita dati, ah." 'Cause if I saw it, I would have taken a photo immediately. It would have been in my galleries, I would have been posting about it all the time. So, ang maganda dito, kita natin at least two generations 'no, ng Marikina City buffing. So, the circles in the middle, are likely from Marcy Chodoro's regime, while the flowers, are from Maridas Fernando or MCF's regime. It's indicated by this faint but still visible, MCF art 'no, na label under nung flowers. So, si Chodoro, he's been mayor since 2016 and he won the recent re-elections to still be the mayor of Marikina now. Well, si MCF, she was mayor from 2001 to 2010. So, yung pink swatch na nakita natin kanina dun sa Google Maps photo, likely galing siya sa panahon ni Mayor Del de Guzman. Kasi around 2014, yung photo na yon. So, I'm assuming na hindi kanya yung bilog-bilog sa gitna. Kasi parang iba yung style ng buffing, iba din yung kulay na ginagamit. So, interesting yan pag nakita niyo sa Marikina yung differences ng colors, ng styles, shapes na pinipili nila, can indicate na ibang government no yung gumawa nung buffing na yon. So, kita natin from these generations of buffing na hindi lang consistent city effort, no? Yung pag-buff ng graffiti sa city. May style differences din sila. So, these aesthetic differences may indicate differences in government approaches and even political and personal philosophies ng mga leaders ng city. So, these are not simple differences in leadership either, but could be gendered themselves. So, sa visual pa lang, no, pwede nang mag-lean na may layer ng gender differences sa buffing. Kasi, yung bilog-bilog na nasa gitna nga, yung makulay, para siyang abstract expressionist eme, di ba? And it's likely from Mayor Chodoro's term. And Mayor Marcy Chodoro is a guy. Tas yung flowery buff naman, yung merong MCF art, ay kay MCF, who's a woman, no? Siya yung wife ni Bayani Fernando. So this shows that aesthetic differences, both as simple aesthetics but also as something politically charged, may be influenced by epistemological and ontological differences rooted in gender as well as in other factors. So eto 'no, isa pang interesting na nakita ko sa paghagilap sa internet, from the Marikina City WordPress. These differences in aesthetics and in approach 'no, in buffing is, not just present in the buff itself, kasi nung panahon pala ni MCF meron din talagang van ang MCF art team. So ayan, may flowers din siya. So parang may recognition naman na pareho sila ng aesthetic, preferences doon. So complete itong van na 'to nung aesthetic nung leadership nung panahon na yon. I don't really see these kinds of vans around the city anymore. But this is something that's still worth exploring, no, regarding the current government's approach and effort to buff graffiti in the city. Paano na ba nila siya ginagawa? Meron ba silang parang buff mobile pa rin na nag-exist? So that's something that I really hope to find out further while doing this project. But it's just an interesting finding na na-document nitong Marikina City WordPress blog. Yeah, ultimately, no, I think this research can open conversations about the role and importance of aesthetics in sociological explorations, no, of things such as gender, order, politics, and everyday life. So we can refer to buffing as a cover up, no, in two senses. So first, as a way to paint over graffiti, it covers up graffiti, diba? And second, as a way to hide what exists. So rather than just cleaning or curing graffiti, as is implied by Landry's aesthetics of security, parang yung problems na nag-underlie no, sa existence ng graffiti, kung bakit ba nagkakaroon ng graffiti in the first place, ay hindi exactly naiintindihan at na-explore. Kasi when you're curing things, di ba, it demands that you investigate and understand the root cause of the matter in the first place. However, when you cover something up, you just do your best no, to try to invisibilize it, to try to pretend that it doesn't exist. So this can become an entry point to an exploration of the city's approach not just to graffiti, but also to broader urban problems. Urban poverty, ano pa ba? Jaywalking, for example, di ba? So buffing serves to merely cover things up rather than address problems at their root. So ano pa kaya yung kino-consider ng city, no? Or ano pa kaya yung pwede natin i-consider na band-aid solutions lang ng city sa pang-araw-araw niyang problema? And extending this question no, to beyond Marikina City, what else might be considered cover-ups, no? Mga approach ng governments and institutions to different problems that exist that they don't really try to investigate or dig deeper, no? And try to address at the root. Kasi kahit anong gawin natin, no? kahit tapalan natin ng tapalan ng pintura ang mga pader at anumang mga sulat na meron sa mga pader na 'to, babalik at babalik yung problema kung hindi mo siya uugatin, 'di ba? Puwede rin nating i-reframe din yung question na, problema ba talaga ang graffiti? Or is there something worth, exploring and cooperating with there? So, ayun lang naman, maraming salamat sa pakikinig, and I hope that you found this study interesting.